right, ladies and gentlemen, there is no better way than to kick off the college basketball season in style here on Sportswire Radio. And the guys and gals are actually starting today because now everybody can be with each other. And I thought, well, what better way than to start the season off with our guest tonight? And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest, what a journey he has, because he was a part of arguably the greatest CUNY team to ever play men's or women's basketball. They were the last team and the only team to be in the Final Four, and they won in CUNY the 1981-82 regional championships there in order to get into that NCAA Final Four. And in fact, they were third that season in the entire Division III, and what a journey it was for the then Brooklyn College Kingsmen. And our guest is as Brooklyn as it comes. He's a Lincoln High School graduate and much, much more, and I'm excited about it. We've had him on here in the past, but I think this interview is going to do him a little bit more due diligence and get into that story, especially for everybody here that is watching and listening to this here on Sportswire Radio. So, without further ado here on the Sports Report, number one Level Sports Show, basketball legend from the 1982 Brooklyn College Kingsmen men's basketball team, the only team from CUNY to have ever played in the Final Four and soon to be inducted into the Brooklyn College Athletics Hall of Fame. His name is Danny Byrnes. Danny, long time no speak.
Hey, I should have had a couple of Red Bulls before this thing to catch up with your enthusiasm.
Well, I gotta be honest with you, Danny. I feel like I needed them today because I'm literally on like 3 hours sleep. I got my brother and his kids, they move in, and I literally slept for an hour, and it was like basically, and then I went to work after that because I was worked up, and then I'm like, you know what? We got Danny Byrnes. I'll get through it because at the end of the day, we're speaking with a Hall of Famer, and it ain't too often that I get to speak with a Hall of Famer, so obviously, congratulations, my friend. Obviously, a lot to get into here tonight. Certainly, I know for the team and for you especially, this is a big, big deal. So I'm going to go straight for the jugular here, right to the top on Sportswire Radio. And Danny, talk to me finally about now the day is coming, December the 2nd.
Finally.
Lehman, back home, Brooklyn College, the 40th anniversary. The team gets inducted into the school's Athletics Hall of Fame. And talk to me, Danny, and what that means to you.
You know, it means a lot. You know, it's, sometimes when you're younger and you're in the moment, you don't realize how precious it was to be around a great coaching staff that we had with, Coach Reiner, and to be around quality players that we had. And not only were they very athletic, not counting myself, that they were just an intelligent group of players. And, we were well prepared for many games, and our practices were very intense, and it was a very competitive thing. So does it mean a lot? Sure. Over the years, unfortunately, my sons had to hear many of these stories of the Brooklyn College, games and tournaments, and number of players. And I guess with us finally getting into the Hall of Fame, and then being COVID kind of postpone this like 2.5 years.
I know, because we spoke with you in the summer of 2020, and we were like, well, maybe they'll make through, maybe we'll get to the ceremonies, and it never happened. Then last year, obviously, even though basketball returned, but for most of the season, especially in CUNY, there was no fans, no nothing. So you guys had to wait a really, really long time for this, Danny.
Yeah, this is going to be good, and now it's going to be December 2nd. Friday, it's going to be a game against Lehman. So so we'll have the ceremony from before the game, and then at halftime we get introduced. The best part about this is being with teammates. 40 years later, we're not talking about 10, 20, 30, 40, 4 decades later. I get to sit in the bleachers, before they introduce with all my teammates, and and it's a lot of fun. There's although we had success on the court, our biggest success, and I'm sure Coach Reiner is looking down at us, has been off the court since then, and what we've achieved. And, successful many, in private business, in civil service, and then all the nonprofit groups that we've been involved in has been tremendous. And I guess at times, with this Hall of Fame thing, I got to talk to many of the teammates, the coaches' daughters, and it's been a fun experience. The journey of this Hall of Fame thing has probably been a lot of fun for me too, and listening to everybody's individual stories, and then everybody's version of how they remember the team, and all of them are fond memories. So,
Oh, absolutely. It better be fond memories. You guys are the only team in the history of CUNY to make the Final Four. And on top of that, Danny, I mean, we were talking about this off the air. There ain't even that many teams that have even replicated that Division 1, 2, or 3. I mean, St. John's, we spoke about in 85, Seton Hall in 89. I mean, St. Peter's, I guess you could say, is the tri-state area. They came pretty close this past year. Seton Hall in 2000. St. John's had a few other teams in the late 90s, but that's it. I mean, you guys definitely are at the top of the mountain here, pretty much. You guys are pretty much on the Mount Rushmore, I think, in New York City college basketball teams at any level over the past 40 years. And then, I mean, December 2nd's coming. Now we're basically, about 8 or 9 weeks away from that moment? I mean, how are you feeling? Are you starting to think about this a little more? Are you starting to, I don't know, maybe have stomach knots? I mean, is there anything that's coming to mind saying, you know what? Wow, this day is finally coming. It's almost like, it almost reminds me in a crazy way, even though I'm a New York Islanders fan, hockey reminds me of how all those Rangers fans in 1994 were kind of waiting that they could finally die in peace because the Rangers had won the Stanley Cup. It's almost like the Brooklyn College men's basketball team finally gets its due. Everybody can be happy and go their merry ways because now you guys are finally getting a moment that's long overdue. So how you feeling now we're getting closer to this moment?
Yeah, very much because I am a Ranger fan, and I do remember how that felt. That yes, all those years. But no knots in the stomach. Just really, kind of glad that it's going to finally come, and to embrace my teammates and stuff like that, and hear the stories about it. Having a picture and on a plaque, team picture that we're in the Hall of Fame is going to be pretty cool. And I get to celebrate it with, some of my family's going to be there, and then with everybody else's family. It's when you get to see your teammates, and over the years I got to see many of them, and especially over this 2.5 year thing, I had lunch with them and talked to them. What does it mean to them? We've kind of embraced this. This is going to be pretty cool, and share, again, reminiscing about a time that we loved. It's easy to reminisce about stories and the other teams, because as much as I can bring up, who we played and who was on that team, the world gets smaller. I was at a family reunion picnic.
You told me about this last week. Go ahead.
And my cousin's son is now dating. I guess they're engaged now. That is the stepdaughter of Jerry Caning, one of the great Staten Island forward. And she tells a story. Oh, my uncle. He played basketball, and all of a sudden, my stepdad, sorry. And when when she started talking, I was like, Jerry Caning, and she was like, yeah, So I guess the world is small at times, but a lot of paths cross, and basketball was one of those things that kind of helped me cross a lot of paths and a lot of people. So.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. I always felt that the game of basketball brought so many people from so many different backgrounds together, especially in Kings County and the borough of Brooklyn, for sure. I mean, the borough of Brooklyn is a melting pot of a place you're going to get. But I mean, Danny, I was curious because you kind of brought up the fact that it's been 2.5 years since the announcement, and also to the fact that, a lot of you guys are obviously getting older. But I mean, when was the last time that you guys were all together? I'm trying to think about it, even from the first time we did an interview. Maybe 2016, most of you guys were there when Brooklyn College went to the NCAA tournament. I know 2020 you guys weren't there when when the team had won the last time they went to the NCAA tournament before COVID. But when was the last time you guys were all together?
I believe it was 2016. That was the team that
Coach McAuliffe obviously coached that. That's why I brought that up, because Coach obviously was the coach then, and that was a special team. And we've kind of talked about that team in depth, kind of compared you guys to them. And that was my question to you, really.
No, that was the last time we were together. And as much, it was very enjoyable. I did City University League actually embraced us, and they celebrated us at halftime at one of the team. And of course, Rich's team was very talented. He coached
Oh,
them,
they were a great team. Great team.
and unfortunately, they got eliminated early, and but we were hoping that they were going to do a similar run that we had, and and again, like you've been talking about it. Teammates are always going to be, teammates. I mean, when you're doing sprints, when you practice as long as we do, when you have all these plane rides, airport time, bus rides, I mean, most of the time we remember, it's all about like, oh yeah, remember that time in the hotel and we did this. So is the bonding that you have is tremendous over the years. And it doesn't matter if it's high school sports or, little league sports or anything else. There is something about sports that's greater than just the game itself. And, this is one of the things we embrace as teammates at Brooklyn College and stuff like that. So, yeah, 2016, it'll be 6 years.
Even that's a long time. I know obviously during COVID, we spoke with Coach McAuliffe about the 82 team and the 16 team, and obviously the likes of Jamel Gist, who's now a coach at York now, and Nick Grasso, a number of those different players that were on that team. But, you guys obviously at the end of the day are a little bit more of a special team because of obviously what you guys did. But I mean, there's no question in talking about some of those things. And obviously we'll get into the season here in a few minutes, but you mentioned, which I want to go into because you talked about the travel and the hotels and the plane rides. I mean, that don't happen at the CUNY level. I mean, I've been covering CUNY basketball for a while. I've been covering the Skyline Conference and some of the other conferences. I mean, you guys were pretty much like a big deal. I mean, I would think more than anything else, and I know we spoke about this the first time, but I mean, for those that are listening and watching here on Sportswire Radio, I mean, talk about those memories about being a kid from Brooklyn, Southern Brooklyn, and all of a sudden you're flying all around the country. You're in these big hotels. It's like a big deal. I mean, you guys are almost like the Beatles, almost of Brooklyn in that moment, that little, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks in that little time frame. I mean, so talk about those memories of the plane rides, the travel, and what was that like? Because, again, I have barely traveled in my life, so I'm even curious from a personal level, again, Danny, on what that was like.
No, you know what? A lot of us were from very humble beginnings, and so some of us, it was the first time on planes when we were doing some travel and stuff like that. And you brought up St. Peter's earlier, we were at a different version of it. We were like at a quieter version because there wasn't that much publicity.
Sure.
The NCAA tournament as it is now, but we were at
it's a different ball game then. Yeah, it's
at a lower level. We were kind of like a St. Peter's version of at Brooklyn. We went to Borough Hall. We got approximation.
Howard Golden, right? Howard Golden.
Yeah,
right?
Howard Golden back then. And, we all got our own little letter from graduates. We went to, Borough Hall, 210 Geralm Street. Anybody from Brooklyn knows that,
Oh, I know about it because I have a background in politics. So I happen to know Brooklyn Borough Hall very well. So, yep, I know it very well.
So we got to celebrate. We bounced around a little and it was a lot of fun. And,
Sure.
For us, the bonding, a lot of that happens. And you're like, when you're saying about CUNY is different now and how they don't have that, I can just tell you is that at an outlawed bid, because, like the CUNY winner was, College of Staten Island.
Yep.
With Tom Johnson, Jerry Caning, Whitehead, the Harris brothers. I'm sure I'm missing a slew of them, but they,
CSI.
That was a very talented team. And we, they won out, they won the CUNYs and they were a really, really good team. We matched up well against them. We beat them 2 out of 3 times in the year, but they were all close games and it could have gone either way. But, John Jay, they had Pookie Wilson at the time. And he, I think they were 19-7. Baruch was 18-8 and they beat us.
Baruch always good. Baruch is, as long as I can remember, Baruch is usually good, so that doesn't surprise me on Baruch.
They had a guy, Roger Miller, on that team who was who must have career highs against us, but he was an unbelievable player.
I hope you weren't guarding him too much.
Yeah, no, it wasn't me. Actually, I don't think anyone on team had success guarding him.
Good
but
point there.
And even Queens College was good. So I mean, the coaching was Evan Pickman at CSI.
And I think Queens went to
Or
D2
Bryant.
eventually after that as well. So Queens
Yeah,
was
yeah.
very
So I
good.
mean,
Yep.
there was the talent in the CUNYs. Just there were battles to get through our own league.
Oh, listen, CUNY then was not. Listen, and I don't want to get into too much trouble, but
Sure,
CUNY then
I
and
know.
now, I mean, it's a night and day. I mean, trust me, I've covered the CUNY, and certainly those days, you guys were all like big deal, and you guys were playing against NBA like guys in the summer, and even you, Danny. I mean, today you probably would have been a superstar in the CUNY act, but in those days in Brooklyn, you were pretty much lucky to get 10, 15 minutes a game.
Yeah, Brooklyn and Queens at the time, the talent. Brooklyn was a basketball town,
Oh,
and you
Brooklyn
played
always was.
basketball
Brooklyn
in the
always was.
schoolyards all the time. And I lucked out where, I didn't play at Lincoln, but the thing of basketball outside is, I paid for my parish, St. Brendan's, and
Yep.
I got paired up with the Flynn brothers, Terry and Billy. I had Frank Volpe, Joe Santino, the Shelley brothers, Tim and Kevin. We had a lot of talent. It was like a high school team to begin with, and we got to play a lot of basketball. So when it was time to go to the next level and to try out at Brooklyn, there was multiple people like Keith Williams. I went to Lincoln High School, a powerhouse.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Keith Williams went to
The Marbury brothers played there, right? In Lincoln?
Yeah, the Marburys, and my year was Eric Marbury, the oldest, was the
there
same.
You go.
And
there
then Keith Williams played at Jefferson, and they were a powerhouse, and he didn't play on in his high school. Rick Davis didn't, he went to Brooklyn Tech, and they were a powerhouse, and he didn't get there either. So like there was, but when I say Brooklyn was talented, in fact, you could just go to so many parks, from Marine Park to Tillery Park to Manhattan Beach. I mean,
Homecrest Park. You had McKinley Park, Leif Erikson Park, Dyker Park. You had Canarsie, the Pat by Seaview Avenue. I mean, there's a whole list of courts in Brooklyn that you could find a court, and somebody's on there, and somebody's good in those days. I mean, they don't call New York the Mecca for basketball for nothing, and Brooklyn really was always the anchor of that, no question.
Yeah, you mentioned about we used to open the gym in the summer to open the league, and we'd have Chris Mullen down there. We had Kevin Graney. We had John Sally as a youngster, going to Georgia Tech. Stuart Granger out of Villanova. Arturo Brown from Boston University, the late Arturo Brown. Chris Logan would come down from Holy Cross. So we had a lot of talent, just besides just players just coming in, not being mentioned here, but I mean, those were unbelievable games. They were college D1 games played in the summer, and everyone got better because of it. And the competitiveness, a 7-point game in the summer shouldn't matter, but the intensity of those games were.
Well, I think it did matter because, listen, you obviously being a part of a team that goes to the Final Four, and then obviously a lot of these guys you mentioned, I mean, they're either D1 players, pro players, and in the case of a Chris Mullen and a John Sally, we're talking NBA champions or Hall of Famers. I mean, so there's no question that, you guys all ran the gauntlet here. And on top of that, you guys were just from different neighborhoods. I mean, that's the thing. It was almost like you had neighborhood rivalries. I mean, Chris Mullen being a Flatbush Marine Park guy, you being from Midwood, St. Brendan's, and, Canarsie from John Sally. I mean, all these different guys. I mean, you're all separated by different neighborhoods. I think that's what it made so interesting about this team and kind of led you to be able to prepare for that run. And then talking about the season here in the team, we'll get into the coaches and the players in a second here as we're on Sportswire Radio with the legendary Danny Byrnes. And Danny Byrnes, by the way, is going to be part of the Brooklyn College Kingsmen now Bulldogs men's basketball team that December 2nd is finally going to be officially inducted into the Athletic Schools Hall of Fame. So congratulations to Danny and the rest of the team here. We are talking about that here on Sportswire Radio, and my name is the Reverend Tom Bryson. If you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, do give us a like on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. And, Danny, talking about that, I mean, obviously you guys don't even win the conference in the regular season. You guys go in it, and we talk about the competition, and walk me through going through where you're waiting to get in to say, hey, are we going to continue to play? Because in those days, there was no NIT at the D3 level. There was no, I mean, there's a thing called the ECAC tournament now that they have, but like very few teams play in that, and it's almost like it's you don't even want to be in it because when we covered the John Jay team in 2020, and I went there when they played the ECAC after they lost to Brooklyn College in the semifinals in the CUNY tournament. It was almost like the ECAC. It's almost like it's such a deflator. So what's going on through your mind and your teammates, Coach Reiner, Coach Gustis, everybody else, when you guys all of a sudden find out, you know what? We're continuing and we're actually going to play in the NCAA tournament. So talk to me about those memories there.
Yeah, you know what? We were disappointed that we didn't get into the finals. All year we talked about, the matchups with the with the College of Staten Island. Yep. They were, I think for 3/4, 80% of the season, they were the number one ranked team in the country, and they got a loss right before we beat them, and then we lost to Baruch and didn't get to the CUNY finals. So were we deflated? Yeah, we were. But we thought the ECAC tournament was going to be call our name. If we didn't get into the NCAAs, we knew we would probably be an ECAC tournament at the time. And were we, I don't know, deflated. All I know is that when we heard the news that we got an outlaw, it was very happy. I got a call from Rich McAuliffe, who I guess he just got off the phone with the coach. And, back then it wasn't like we could text each other immediately.
Oh, there's no that. Those were the days when you needed a payphone almost.
Yeah, a landline phone, exactly. My kids don't know what a payphone is, I'm
the last generation that remembers my freshman year in college in 2005, I believe it was. I remember still not having a cell phone. If I was in the city, which I was at the time, and I would tell my mother, hey, I'm coming home, and then I would have to get on the subway because I didn't have a cell phone at that time. So, yeah, there were days in 1982 that people would just, there was no texting and social media. There was none of that. It was basically either you had to see somebody in person or you had to call them through a payphone.
Yeah, but when we heard about it, we all excited about it. But we went through teams that were pretty strong. We would beat 3 of the top 10 teams in the country to get to the Final Four. So we beat Ithaca. They were ranked in the top 10. Then we went, then of course we had to play, Staten Island, and even though we beat the same teams as Staten Island was, they were crushing people. They were winning by, 15, 20 points, and it just goes to show like matchups and how teams, are a little bit different. I thought our edge when we beat Staten Island was that, not only do we have the talent of all the players we had, but they matched us, player by player. But there was a coaching thing, and I think Mr. Reiner put us over the edge on that, just to make sure we were put in the right roles at the right time. And then after we got past them, we beat Roanoke, and that was big. And then in the first round, we in the Final Four, we lost to Potsdam by 1, and
they were 49. Yeah, that's a tough one.
The Potsdam they were the reigning national champs, so they were the champs the year before. And we got the shot we wanted in that game because I know every one of our players, plays that, that jump shot in their head all the time. But we had, Danny Brown taking that shot. He was an all selection out of Canarsie. He was, it's exactly the play we wanted. And, he just hit the front of the rim. He makes that shot 7 out of 10 times. I would have bet that that one was going in. Perfect it's smooth lefties, perfect rotation going in. It wasn't like he forced it, and I expected nothing but net, and of course it didn't happen. But the net. But now, I mean, back then we actually it was a consolation game. Now there's right. Consolation games. So then we ended up beating Cal State Stanislaus.
But that's, I think, still something that shows the resiliency of you guys. You know what? Because that's a heartbreaking, that's a devastating loss because you guys arguably could have been the national champion. But you know what? You come back the next game and you guys find a way to win, still finish third. And I think that's a big deal to go out and say, you know what? You guys could have easily said, you know what? We gave up. You know what? We've already done what we had to do. But no, you guys came back the next game and you won. I think that speaks to the volumes of kind of the resiliency of the team, and it kind of all meshed. Sometimes that happens in sports. You see it all the time. I think about the Giants when they won the last 2 Super Bowls they had, where they kind of came together at the right time, and you just see it happen in sports all the time. There's just the Mets in 73 in a lot of ways. They were basically down and out, 10 and a half games out of first place, and all of a sudden, lightning in a bottle, and they wind up going to a 7th game of the World. There's just countless stories that you see it. And you guys are kind of, I think, in that way. And talk to me about Coach Reiner, because I know Coach Reiner means so much to you guys. And obviously, he was really the steward of that program, and he led in a lot of ways to the program going into the big lofty heights it wound up going to after when you guys win the tournament and then go into the Final Four. I mean, so talk to me about Coach Reiner, what he meant, and just his overall role in that run, that magical run you guys had.
He was a phenomenal leader and teacher. But he was also a good player in his day. When he came out,
absolutely, a legend, college basketball player too in his own right.
Yeah. So when he when he got out of graduated Lincoln High School, he was one of the best players in the city. And if I thought if we were talking that the 70s and 80s produced a lot of good, Brooklyn produced a lot of players. Back then, they were they would just have the underground subways down to the Carolinas, right? And he started out as a freshman down in North Carolina State, playing for Everett Case, the legendary coach down there. And then he came back he transferred back, didn't really excel down there, meaning for like a social life. And he came back to NYU, and then he starred there. I think he was teammates with Cal Ramsey and a few other players that played for the Knicks and stuff like that. But then he ended up being I guess marrying his wife Tina, and and then he became a coach, at Canarsie, where he produced 2 national champions, in high school, and then he went out to Kansas State, came back to Brooklyn. Coached Lincoln, and basically then coached at Brooklyn College when there was an opportunity. And then he really prepared us, and when we talk about like the coach and the leadership and everything else, basketball is one side of it, but then he was always asking us on a regular basis, what are you going to do after basketball? What's going on here? Talk about relationships with girlfriends, and so he was a life coach as long with everyone else. I know one of the things about this ceremony he's going to do is that everyone's going to have their best Mr. Reiner stories. And, some of them are funny, some of them aren't. He was a yeller. He could get in your face every once in a while.
Yeah, he looked like it from the pictures. He looked like a guy that he might have been definitely a father figure to you guys, but he was definitely a kind of old school, no BS kind of guy, pretty much.
Yeah, he could command your attention when he wanted it. I was talking to Stacy Reiner, one of his daughters, the other day.
Sure.
And when Mr. Reiner used to yell at us, he used to say, "But I do it out of love." And I remember putting that in the back of my head one day, and I was going to say, someday when he's yelling at me, I'm going to ask him, but does he love me? And this is the season after we were playing Canisius up in Buffalo. And
sure, I know Canisius guy.
And we I guess I got put in a game, and he goes to me, "Hey, listen, get Charles Wigfall was a center that was with us at the time," and he goes, "Get Charles out of the middle. I want you to go in the middle and move the ball around." And whatever happened, I get in the game, and Charles was in the middle, and I kind of just went to an empty spot. The ball just got inbounded really quick, but there was a long series. But Charles, for whatever reason, he was new to the offense. He didn't turn and face the opposite way, get the ball rotating to either side, which was the only reason why I got in the game, was to do that. And I guess the ball gets kicked out of bounds, and all of a sudden I hear a ho, ho, which meant to come over. So I do a dead sprint to his step, and I'm towering over him. If he's 5'9", he's on a phone book. He wasn't that tall. Good athlete, but not very that tall. So I'm towering over him, and he is stamping his feet. His face is flushed red. Maybe it's beet red, and he's almost like saying words where it's like spitting through his mustache at me, what, and blah, blah, blah. And at the time I had the perfect thing, to say, hey, do you love me? But I chickened out at the last second and just took all his advice to get into the middle again. And it was one of those moments where I wish I could have gone back and asked, but I did chicken out. There's going to be many of the best of Mr. Reiner stories. And, but overall, he was a very good, leader. I mean, not only as a player, but like he groomed people to work in their communities. I mean, Ted Gustis was a high school player from Canarsie and then came back an assistant coach. And then Ted ended up doing great things.
Larry Vitale obviously also was a part of you guys also. And
I mean, so I mean, his and then Kenny Vickers was one of those guys who's running a program out there, out in Queens, out in Springfield Gardens. And, so he did a lot of off the ball, off the court coaching, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes a lot of sense here. And certainly I think it speaks to the volumes of what he meant to the program and even basketball. And I think the word savant is what I think of most when it comes to Coach Reiner, because you think about his journey. He's a legendary high school player, goes out and plays at North Carolina State, which is no easy feat. Then he comes back, coaches at Canarsie, then goes to Kansas State, which is a big deal in itself, then comes to Lincoln, then comes with you guys and have the kind of success that you guys have. And then even just the year before, I mean, you guys certainly didn't have the season that you would have hoped for. And then to have this run, it's kind of a big deal. So talk to me then about all of a sudden campus. I mean, I would have to think you guys go from, I don't know, you kind of touched upon it, maybe 30, 40, 50 people at these games. I mean, I've gone to enough of these games, so I know what these games are like, Danny. I've covered the CUNY, I've covered these other conferences, and usually it's a small band of people, and you go to these games, you're like, well, what am I doing here? But you guys, as this kind of run goes on and kind of on campus, the word kind of travels, and you guys get big, and you guys become literally the big men on campus. So talk to me then about almost like how you go from maybe obscurity to almost overnight household names in a short amount of time. Walk to me through that, what that was like.
Yeah, exactly what you said. We'd have a 200 people at a game, and then we started winning, and we sold out at at the Roosevelt. The gym was packed. The other teams always supported us. The football team, Dave Jacobs, Howard Robinson, those guys were always there. The baseball team and Wally Pollard, John Waterman, Davey Walker. They used to actually work the announcers and be like team managers and everything else for us. So they were always around the scorekeeping. But they all showed up there. The girls softball team was there, the volleyball team. So the sports immediately came in and embraced us. But then the faculty came. President Hess, Robert Hess at the time, used to bring his son Roger to the games. So it'd be like a little family event that the Hess family would show up, and then there'd be a couple of economics teachers. I mean, the PE teachers, they would come to the games too.
If you got your economics teacher to go to the game, because I took economics, Danny, that was a big deal. If you got your economics teacher to go to one of your games, you definitely are a big deal. Because like I said, I took economics, and my economics professor would have wanted nothing to do with me. But I'm Tom Bryce. You're Danny Byrnes. That's a big difference.
Yeah, but believe me, it wasn't because of my GPA that they were showing up.
I'm sure though. But
when you go to a commuter school where the average student's day is it's like a grind. You get up in the morning, you go to your morning classes, and then all of a sudden you got to jump on mass transportation, either the bus or the train, to go to your part-time job. Then you take the train or the bus back to home so you can eat. Then you study, and then you go to bed and you start the whole day off again, over again. And when that happens, usually you don't get kids that attend. Other students attend the games. But at that time, we ended up getting 1,500, 2,000 people into that tiny Roosevelt gym, which made it sound like it was 10,000 because it was such a small pit of a place you'd mean, but the historic, if you look at it, it's built in the 30s. It's pretty historic looking, when you go there. They have a new gym now, but
The gym now is
the
just
old
it's
gym is
nice.
still there.
Yeah, the gym now is definitely a totally different gym than the gym that you had in those days. And you think about that 1,500 to 2,000 people. The only other thing that I've covered at this level that would be close to that is Yeshiva this past year. And Yeshiva was number one in the country. And they certainly, for a while, looked like maybe they would have been the team to go into the Final Four and have the run that you guys did. But unfortunately, it didn't happen because a team that I cover here on Sportswire Radio, the St. Joseph's now New York Golden Eagles wound up actually defeating Yeshiva at the end of the regular season, and the team itself wound up. They did win the Skyline Conference, but definitely did not do the season that they had hoped in the NCAA tournament. So what you guys did is even more special. And then let's talk about some of the players, because obviously you touched upon some of them. Obviously, some friend of the show, Eddie De La Guardia. Eddie, of course, somebody I know very, very long, and obviously his wonderful family, and of course Coach McAuliffe, and certainly he's a big deal in the school's history, and I'm sure he let everybody know that for sure. But we love Coach McAuliffe, obviously. But Rick the Rejecter Davis, Glenn McMillan. I mean, it's a long list of players. Walk me through some of the players that you played with, and just kind of their roles and what they were like as teammates.
Yeah, you know what? I have a list here because my friends tease me that I covered. I gave enough credit to everyone, but it feels good that
No, we're on video now. No, trust me, it's a bigger deal on the video. I can tell you for a fact, doing it on the video versus on a Zoom and with just audio, it'll be a big deal when guys get to hear their names on video. Trust me.
All right. Well, let me start off with Alan Wheeler. Alan was a good jump shot guard. One of the things that, great arc on a shot, great rotation. The thing about Alan is that he played at Brooklyn College. He couldn't break the lineup like many people trying to fight for minutes. He couldn't. He was a good player, and I get to I've had lunch with him and stuff like that. A great.
But you go to Wheeler's in Sheepshead Bay branch because his name is Wheeler. I just thought
no.
Sheepshead Bay Road.
Yeah, he's an insurance guy now. Great career and everything else. So it was really good. Earl Robinson, he was a guy from New Trick High School. He was an
sure, New Trick very well. 80th Street and 16th Avenue. Sure, I know it very well.
He was an all-city selection. Great defensive player, catalyst for our team. Great in transition. Mm-hmm. He was a freshman on the team, but like some of our freshmen, they didn't really know they were freshmen. They came out and played. They like we talked about the park wars and everything else. High school prepared them well, and they did good. Kenny Vickers, sure. He went to Sarah J. Hale. He was a great athlete. He was he was mature for his age, and he was really good in Mr. Reiner's defenses when we had defensive pressures. Him, Ronnie Phillips, and Earl Robinson were just tremendous. They were like all over the court. They would seem like three players that would seem like six out on the court defensively. Then we had Greg Sullivan out of LaSalle Academy.
Yep.
Greg didn't play basketball until organized until late, but he was a good leader for us. Quiet in the locker room, very mature. Another good jump shooter. He couldn't break the lineup either on a regular basis because of the talent. But he ends up being a professor at the University of Missouri. He has a PhD. All three of his sons all played college basketball, and now they're all college coaches. So there's a coaching tree for Greg. The next one is Glenn Earl James, and we just call him Earl. But he was the backup point guard on our team, and he was a tremendous talent at Canarsie. So him, Danny Brown, and John Sally were teammates at Canarsie. So, that's how their connection coming to Brooklyn and everything else, really good. Eddie LaGuardia, not only is a teammate, but now he's a lifelong friend, almost like a brother to me. He's
your name came up always quite a bit over the years, obviously, with the De La Guardia family. That I can tell you for sure.
Mr. and Mrs. D, they came to all our games.
I still miss Mr. D. It's been
Rudy, we
7 years. It's been 7 years, unfortunately now. Yep.
So, but he had a great career after work too. Fortune 500, working for UPS. He had a 30-year career. It was fun. He's back in coaching now, so that's good because he enjoys it. We had Bobby Edwards on our team. He was like 6'4", 6'5". He was a big man, very athletic, great in transition. He another athlete in that pressing zone that was hard for teams to get around him. Probably played out of position in the beginning of the year playing center, but he had some great games in the tournament for us. And Bobby's missed. He's down in Georgia now, and I don't know if he's going to be able to make it. We hope he will, but hopefully we'll get there. And then Rich McCall, if he was a designated shooter, I mean, catch and shoot, no one was better at it. He could run his man into a baseline. He was really, I don't know how to put it. The intensity that and the work that he put into scoring, we needed it at the time, and he was a lot of fun to be around at that time. Keith Williams, point guard deluxe. He gave up his game to make sure that that the team got the ball.
That was a real teammate, by the way, to do that. That was a real teammate to do that. That.
And that's part of Mr. Rhino, always making sure we embraced our roles. But he could, he wouldn't turn the ball over. Keith, he was always clutch on free throws at the end of the game, and he, truthfully, he was a star for us on the things. He could have sliced and got to the basket a lot quicker and. And scored many more points, but he gave, his game, he gave up his offensive game, for the good of the team. Then we jumped down to Danny Brown, and I can tell you that, he, as a freshman, he didn't play like a freshman at all. He had a real smooth game, lefty, a great outside shot.
We spoke about him in the Potsdam game. Obviously, that was the moment there. We thought that would be a different outcome.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Danny was one of those players that we needed, and even keeled. Every once in a while, Mr. Ryan got on him that he needed more and everything else out of him, and he took it. As a freshman.
I think the reference they used to use those kind of players was they would be cool hand loose. That's the term they used to use back in the day.
Yeah. And then, of course, Rick, Davis.
Rick the Rejected Davis, certainly.
Rick, Rick was my first friend at Brooklyn College, other than that I didn't know beforehand. We got along great and everything else. And I got to see his, his evolution as a player. When he first came in, he didn't get a lot of playing time in the beginning. We had two other coaches before Mr. Reiner showed up at Brooklyn. But he improved every year. And, besides, he's the reason why I never developed an inside game, because every one of my shots would have been blocked, inside the 10 feet. And, but he's a really good guy. He developed into.
Yes, I had the chance to speak with him a few different times after we spoke, and certainly, you wouldn't know personally the kind of player he was on the court from his demeanor off the court. I mean, total class act of a guy, just total class act.
Very, very, very humble. Then we go to Ronnie Phillips. Ronnie Phillips was wow,
6'2" guard. Ronnie Phillips was. He was a big time guard.
Yeah, we played a 1-2-2 zone, and he played the top of the zone, which slid down the middle. And, although not the biggest guy in the world, if we needed a rebound, he could get it. If we needed a basket, Ronnie would get it. He was one of those quiet leaders who doesn't verbalize things. He just let his game play for himself, and it spoke volumes. Let me see, who am I getting to down here?
I want to give a shout out because Earl James is with us here, and he had put a comment saying, "In Danny, no baseline Byrnes, awesome job." So I want to make sure I recognize Earl, because Earl is tuned in with us on YouTube. So thank you, Earl, for tuning in and watching us live. So that's a nice little plug.
Just to let you know, Earl, who's the most popular guy on our team,
he looks like he would have been the most popular. He looks like he's the most well dressed and sharpest.
It's kind of like the backup quarterback on the teams on a football teams and the most. But he's the backup point guard on that team. But everybody loved Earl, right? But he's kind of taking a shot at me, no baseline Dan, because one of the things is that I gave up the baseline on a regular basis. My feet were planted to the floor. So I started to remind myself that I shouldn't give up the baseline. I used to scream at players, no baseline. So right now, Earl is giggling, right now. I got it. But yeah, I deserve that,
Well,
So.
maybe we'll get Earl on one of these days, and we'll share his memories on that, because I'm sure everybody's got different tales of the magical run. So certainly, that's different things. And is there anybody else player wise that you'd like to recognize? I know you've got a
I
list
think
there.
I think I got them all, Yeah, Ronnie Phillips, Danny Brown. Yeah, no, I have a list, so I wanted to make sure I got
Yeah,
them.
I appreciate that, because sometimes I do these all the time, and there's always people say, can I get this person in? Can I get that person? Because I cover all types of things, as I'm sure you're aware of. So I can certainly appreciate that here. And we are on Sportswire Radio right now, just going down memory lane here, kicking off the college basketball season. And I could not think of a better way than to kick off the season here with our very good friend, Mr. Danny Byrnes, the legendary Danny Byrnes, and the rest of the Brooklyn College Kingsmen. Now they're going to be the Kings of Kings County, because they are finally going to be in the Brooklyn College Athletics Hall of Fame December the 2nd against Lehman. So definitely make sure you attend that game. It's going to be a really, really emotional ceremony, I'm sure, for a lot of the guys. And certainly we're going down memory lane to talk about that. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. And again, if you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, continue to give us a follow on Facebook at Sportswire Radio, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. And Earl also wants to add that surely wasn't a shot. Dan, I tell that to my kids to make sure that they don't. Love you, bro. See, I told you he was not taking a shot. He was doing that in love. And who could not like Earl James? The guy looks like he's one of the most sharpest people. He's got the bow tie, he's got the suit. I mean, I'm the complete antithesis of that. So this guy, Earl, knows what he's doing. Coach definitely knows what he's doing here. So obviously, big shout out to Earl James, and big shout out to some of the guys that have come on the past. Eddie De La Guardia. I'm always thinking about Eddie, because I haven't run into Eddie in a while, and certainly Coach McAuliffe. I know Coach McAuliffe, his daughter was doing big things playing basketball. Obviously, Rick the Rejector Davis, Ronnie Phillips. I'm friends with Ronnie Phillips on Facebook. So a lot of you guys I'm really, really excited about here for sure. Obviously we spoke about the players, but I do want to touch upon the fact that, in a way, I know it's disappointing that we've had to wait 2.5 years for this, Danny, but in a way, it's the 40th anniversary. I mean, maybe this is kind of meant to be. It's 40 years. It's a big deal, right? Because if you guys would have got honored after 38 years or 39 years, it's like an odd number, right? But 40 years is like a big deal. When I think about anything that's a celebration, anniversary, 40 is a big deal. So in a way, I mean, this has got to make it more monumental that this is going to be the 40th anniversary of you guys winning and getting into the Final Four.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I certainly know that 20 would have been better. But it is what it is. We the 2.5 years of the delay from this, that's okay. We just got to get it. There's one person I did leave out. There was a player, Jim Sullivan, who was on our team, and he has passed away.
I'm so sorry.
Jim was a 6'2" guard. And he was with Brooklyn College for a long time. He loved basketball. When I'm love with the capital L. And he had a great jump shot, and I always talk about the quick release, the soft shot, the great rotation, hit nothing but the net. When he used to shoot free throws 100 before we left every practice, guaranteed he'd get between 90, 95 and 100. The guy was unbelievable. And he only had vision in one of his eyes, and he didn't let that hold him back. And when he guarded you in practice, you absolutely knew it, because you were getting a black and blue. He didn't intentionally do it, but there was an elbow coming your way, or somehow you were going knee to knee. He absolutely was one of the best conditioned athletes on our team, and unfortunately, life, he left us too soon. But he was the commissioner of the PSAL for a while, and the trophy was named after him. So whoever wins the championship trophy in the men's basketball, they win the James Sullivan trophy. So I think that's pretty cool, and something.
That's a pretty cool feat itself. I mean, listen to
about our team.
I think it's another thing. It's a point, another feather in the cap of you guys. I mean, all these different things, and yet that's another one. I mean, that's a really, really big accomplishment there. Obviously, again, 40 years and thinking about all these things, and I mean, obviously, then coming into it and talk to me then about some of the leadership at Brooklyn College. I want to touch upon them. Obviously, Bruce Filosa, who was there, I mean, for like a million years, and now Alex Lang is pretty much the man there. And Alex Lang has pretty much been, when I think of basketball coaches in the tri-state area, especially in the CUNY, it's Alex Lang. I mean, I know that everybody will mention the Alessi brothers, but I think Alex Lang, what he's done, and obviously the women's basketball team this past year winning the first game in the school's history in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, they've been to the NCAA tournament a bunch of times, and they've been one of the premier programs. And obviously, Coach Lang has just done a phenomenal job there. I mean, talk to me then about maybe some of the leadership at Brooklyn that has kind of led to make this happen, and maybe the likes of an Alex Lang. If you want to throw in a mention to anybody else, feel free.
No, right now, Alex Lang, I think he's on his 10th or 11th 20-win seasons in a row, and that's not a mistake. He recruits the good girls to play on his teams.
Yep.
I'm saying girls, the young women.
Chanel Jamont, the James sisters. Yep. I mean, it's just phenomenal.
I mean, and then not only does he recruit the right ones, he develops them. And and then of course, how do you get people to win? You coach them, and you teach them to embrace their roles. All of these girls that they're on his team, whatever team they were on previously, they were probably the high scorer. But then you have to give it up, and then embrace it because, for the betterment of the team. That's the biggest thing that the conversations that I had with Alex Lang. I mean, he's the son of a coach, and as I understand it, unless I got that wrong, and he's coaching now. He's doing a great job. I hope he becomes. I know he's the acting athletic director, but he would certainly be a good addition to be permanently named the athletic, director.
Absolutely, no question. I think Alex, what he's done at that program. And obviously, Alex has been very gracious to us here in the past on Sportswire Radio. I've spoken with him, and obviously, he's been somebody that look at that program, look at that women's basketball program, even look at the basketball program as a whole. I mean, what that program was and what it is now. I mean, Alex is really responsible for a lot of that. So I certainly want to congratulate him. And obviously, we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But I wanted to mention something kind of off a little bit of the topic from the 82 team, but I know you wanted me to mention this, and I mentioned it the first time we did an interview, but you guys actually played with some guy that's he's pretty famous. He's pretty well known. He's as Brooklyn as it gets. I'm pretty sure he's from I believe the Bath Beach section of Brooklyn, and you've seen him in places like The Sopranos and big time shows on TV, and you would never have known that he was a college basketball player. And his name is Steve Sharippa. So you got to ask, I got to talk, and I got to ask you. I mean, talk to me about your memories of your old friend and teammate there, Steve Sharippa.
Yeah, Steve's a great guy. We actually just had lunch, about a month ago. He, you know what? He's the same guy. The success hasn't changed him at all. He was a really good player, sure. And he played with passion in all the things. So he was in all the summer leagues. We mentioned Diker. That's where he would play on a regular basis. But he would go to every park. He would go down to Tillery Street. He'd go, shoot over to Manhattan Beach. He'd play everywhere. He started.
Manhattan Beach isn't under the radar. That was always Manhattan Beach. People wouldn't think, and I know Brooklyn very well. People wouldn't think Manhattan Beach would be a place that you could get a lot of players out of, but actually quite the opposite. That was kind of an under the radar place.
At least during the day. But he a good guy. He was a really good player, and he was like, although he was classified as a small forward, he really, along with Aronia Parker and Billy Roll, he was like the offense ran through him. And, he'd probably score about 14, 15 a game. He'd probably grab about, 6 or 7 rebounds a game. But he was definitely our lead. He was the captain of our team. And, the first time I saw him in The Sopranos, I looked at it, and the first thing I looked at, I was like, "Oh, that's got to be a weight suit on him. There's no way Stevie could be that big, And then I find out it was a weight suit, so that was good with him. But he's one of those guys that came from also humble beginnings. He worked his way up through the casinos, from like
Sure.
starting out as a bouncer to being the lead talent guy at the Riviera Hotel, and then he took a chance. He had so he was an executive there, and he took a chance on the acting and got his second successful career at acting. So he's been in Jersey Boys to
Yep.
a bunch of movies, and certainly The Sopranos. And the
Oh,
great thing about it is we go to lunch, and we go out on the street, and he gets The Sopranos. Been over what 10, 15 years now, maybe
yeah,
longer.
about 15 years now, 15, 16 years. Yep.
It's just so popular, and people want to get selfies, pictures taken with him, and he's so nice about it. He's just like, yeah, okay, and
Well, I think well that show because it had so many Brooklyn actors. You had Joe Ganascoli, you had obviously Tony Sirico, the late Tony Sirico, Lorraine Bracco. You had Michael Imperioli. I mean, a lot of them were all just that was I know technically wasn't a Brooklyn show, but almost a lot of that cast was from Brooklyn. And I think a lot of people automatically, just like with you guys, to the fact that you guys 40 years later go to the NCAA tournament, just like with Steve. Brooklyn's a big deal. I always feel like, Danny, that when you say you're from Brooklyn, it's almost like you've made it out there. I love, God bless Staten Island. I love Staten Island. I love Queens. I love Manhattan. I love the Bronx. And I'm very blessed to have many friends, supporters out there, Long Island as well. But when you say you're from Brooklyn, just like you guys, it's like having a label. It's like Coca-Cola. It's like Pepsi. It's like McDonald's. Saying you're from Brooklyn, it just invokes these special emotions. We think about the Brooklyn Dodgers, right? The 55 Dodgers team, right? We think about all the great things about the history of Brooklyn. And you guys, in a lot of ways, I mean, I wasn't even going to ask this, but in a way, you guys are part of Brooklyn history, almost like them bums, almost like all the great Brooklyn people we think about. You talk about Steve Sharippa, John Sally. I mean, even Michael Jordan, for what it was worth, was born in Brooklyn. I mean, there's just something, Danny, about Brooklyn. And you guys, I kind of feel like in a lot of ways, are a part of that special Brooklyn history.
Yeah, I think you might be, adding too much into it, but you know what? To be mentioned in with the people you talked about, the 55 Dodgers, I'm sure all all the parents of people my age have embraced the 55 Dodgers tremendously, and brought when they left, you left a bunch of people with heartbrokens when the Dodgers left.
Yeah.
But being part of any small part of a Brooklyn history is nice. I'm definitely proud to be born and raised there and stuff like that. And I spent 12 years out in California, and as soon as you say water or coffee, everybody's like, "Where are you from?" And that easily comes out of my mouth that I'm from Brooklyn. So I'm very proud of it, and proud of my teammates of how well they did after our playing days compared to the success that we had on the court. So that was a lot of fun. And then, like the sharing of these stories, isn't that kind of like a Brooklyn thing, being, almost everyone you came from Brooklyn, they could tell a good story.
Well, that's it. And that's my point. Brooklyn is like, wow, you're from Brooklyn. I mean, you think about people always want to stop and they want to talk with you. They're like, wow, Brooklyn. Like I said, no disrespect to anyone else. No disrespect to Staten Island and Queens and Manhattan, the Bronx, Long Island. But when you say Brooklyn, it's almost like, wow, you're from Brooklyn? And people will always say, I'm from Brooklyn. They don't say I'm from Staten Island. They don't say I'm from Queens. They say I'm from Brooklyn. You think about, again, Brooklyn, all the greats. John Franco, throw John Franco in there. I mean, a guy from your age range. I mean, obviously, he had some big. I mean, there's a long list. Spike Lee, of course, another guy from, your generation. That would be a big, big name that people would think about in Brooklyn. I mean, there's a long list of people. Bernard King, obviously, the King brothers, obviously. You guys, I think, just might have came just after them. But obviously, I mean, there's a large list of people, Albert and Bernard we just spoke about. But I mean, Brooklyn's a big deal. And that's why I kind of think you guys, in a lot of ways, are just so special. And then I have to ask you, obviously, I mean, walk me through the moment, that game, that you guys win and then get that opportunity to advance to go into the Final Four. I mean, Do you guys know how special it was going into that game? Did you guys know any of the history about anybody from the CUNY not going into the Final Four? Did you guys kind of have any thoughts on that? Was there pressure? I mean, walk me through that game, that moment to when you guys win it all.
Yeah, you know what? When we won the Eastern region, I don't think we knew about that much about the CUNY history. You know, we all knew about City College before CUNY started.
And I
Which,
think Ed De La Guardia mentioned that in an interview. Correct me if I'm wrong. He had
yeah,
mentioned that, right?
you know, in you know, when City College was the first team to win the NCAA and the NIT in the same year, and I'm not
Yep.
sure if that was 50 or 55, but either way,
I
they
think
were
it
the
was
first one.
50. I think Eddie had mentioned 50, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
so either way, you know, it was funny because one of the players on that team was like a guy named Floyd Lane who coached City College at the time years later, you know, as well as part of CUNY. But I guess CUNY started in the either late 60s or early 70s. And then from that point, but you know, we're not only the only CUNY team for basketball, we're the only CUNY team in any sport to make the Final Four, which adds a little bit, you know, more history on it. And there were some great soccer, you know, teams.
Oh,
You
absolutely. I've covered some soccer teams even recently
know,
that.
even Brooklyn had a great
Yep.
team that went during the
Oh, yeah,
82
baseball. I
season.
mean, CSI had some great baseball teams. I mean, listen, Baruch had some really good basketball teams in the 90s. So the fact that you guys are the only one, we're not just talking about basketball, we're not just talking about men's or women's. I mean, all of CUNY athletics, we're talking about track, we're talking about swimming, we're talking about soccer, we're talking
Yeah.
about volleyball, we're talking about baseball, basketball, softball. I mean, I guess you could say there was a time football was played in the CUNY, but I mean, all these different sports, and yet you guys are the only ones. You guys have stood the test of time. There's nobody else that can say, hey, you know what? It was us. No, it's you guys. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what, to me, makes you guys such a big deal. I mean, I almost have to ask you this question. I wasn't going to ask this. You're probably going to chuckle when I ask this to you, but you guys, in a way, almost are like the 72 Dolphins. Are you guys going to be like throwing champagne parties if somebody gets close in the CUNY? Would you guys want somebody else in the CUNY to go to the Final Four? I mean, I'm always curious because I remember before when obviously the Patriots and the Colts, I think, went undefeated in the regular season a couple different times. But for all those years, I remember as a little kid when teams would get undefeated in football and they would show the 72 Dolphins and all those guys would throw like parties and celebrations. And I remember the 98 Broncos, it was when they played the Giants here, and the Broncos, I think, were 13-0 going into that game. And it was a big deal that the Giants had beat them. And I mean, you guys are kind of like those 72 Dolphins. I mean, will you guys almost in a way, I guess, want somebody to advance or not? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
No, I think that we would probably, I think we'd just probably celebrate anybody who would get to the Final Four and that. You know, when we did in 2016 when Richie's team, which I thought was a seriously talented
They
team.
were very good. Those two teams he had, the 15 and 16 teams, we covered them here. I think the 15
Yeah.
team
So
might
when
have
we
actually been better.
Well, I'm sitting next to Keith Williams at one point, and we're, you know, shoulder to shoulder. We're looking at them, and of course, the first thing he goes is, "We beat these guys," you know. And I start laughing, and I go, "Really?"
You know what? We asked Jamel about that. Obviously, I mean, they had Exxon John Balaj and obviously Jamel himself, and I mean, they were good. I mean, but you know, you
So,
guys
you know,
still.
and when I asked Keith, I said, "Hey, you know, they're pretty good." He goes, "No, our defense we'd suffocate them." You know, and of course it'd be a little different. You know, the game has evolved. You know, we didn't have the shot clock back then, so if we had a lead, you know, and I was just talking to Danny Brown about this, that we knew that, you know, myself, Danny Brown, Keith Williams, Rich McAuliffe, you know, and if we either had Ronnie Phillips or Rick Davis out on the court with us, we knew that at the end of the game that you know, the coach would call this one play that we just kill the clock. And if they foul, and they were forced to foul us, we just go to the foul line and make the game. The game was over. And it was kind of funny on the bench or on the court when he called up. And I'm trying to think of the play. I think it's 5. I don't know, but whatever he called that play, we kind of celebrated like the game was over. That's how much confidence the coach instilled in us as players and how we thought we were going to win. I think that we would embrace and celebrate anybody else getting to the Final Four from CUNY. I don't think, we weren't that good to be an undefeated team like the Dolphins, because I think I do love and enjoy that story that they do pop champagne.
Yep.
When you hit, you see guys like, Larry Zonker and all those guys talking
The
about it.
Vic won a
That they
country,
celebrate.
sure.
Yeah, so it was we're not in that class, but we were Eastern Regional champs. We did go to the Final Four. We did go to 3. Ended up being 3 in the country. I think that the biggest thing we're going to probably get out of this is that how much you enjoyed this and how much life lessons we learned from that team that got carried on. Part of the things that I remember from Mr. Reiner that I kept with me in my corporate life was that to build a whole team and to bring quality players to make sure that they understood, and that was part of Ted Gustis's job, is to make sure that he was recruiting the right players. But, the whole team was in it, from our athletic trainers, from Larry Klein to Jay Iskowitz. They took care of us immediately. And they were at every practice, every game, and, that Saturdays and Sundays, so they really bought into it. The managers and, Ray Blake, Fly, as we call them, like there's not too many managers that you have that could sink a 22-foot jump shot off. So Fly was a part of that. Harold Robinson ran every possible thing that we could have, from driving us to the van to moving the equipment. So, the big thing about it is, getting good coaches, from Mr. Grossman to Mike Eisenberg. Then both of them have passed since then. Ted Gustis, Larry Vitelli, and then, of course, the great Mr. Reiner. Just having the message, a clear message that's communicated from the top down that everybody embraces, and it was all about the team. It wasn't about any individual scoring. Richie and Danny Brown had, the most points in that year. But if you asked each one of them individual, it was all about the W and playing good games.
I think with Richie, obviously, him years later on becoming a coach at Brooklyn College, I think a lot of those things and I know we had Richie on and we spoke about that with him, that all comes from Reiner. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, Richie scored a lot of points, no question. I mean, the school's all-time leading scorer. I mean, big deal. Absolutely no question about all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, the stuff that you learned on the court and off the court when it came from Coach Reiner, I think that's really where it all separates itself out here. And we are having a great time here on Sportswire Radio here with Mr. Danny Byrnes. We got about another 20 or so minutes with Danny. Just a tremendous honor to have Danny. And Danny, of course, is talking about the Brooklyn College men's basketball team that is going to finally be long overdue being inducted into the school's Hall of Fame December the 2nd against Lehman. And Brooklyn College is finally going to do what they should have did a long time ago. But obviously, congratulations. I know COVID was a big deal, a part of that, but we're certainly going down memory lane here. And I could not think of a better way to kick off the college basketball season than be with Danny Byrnes himself. And my name, again, is the Reverend Tom Bryce. And again, if you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, continue to give us a follow on Facebook anytime. Also, YouTube as well. It's Sportswire Radio. And we're talking here with Danny Byrnes. So, Danny, I'm going to have to ask you this question. And I don't know how you're going to answer it or not, but I mean, are you going to shed a tear after everything we've spoke about here tonight, everything that we've spoken about periodically over the past 2.5 years? I know Eddie very well, and I know for you, though, you're pretty much really sentimental. I can see that. Now, don't shed a tear for us tonight. Don't shed a tear when I ask you this question now. December 2nd, that's up to you. But, I mean, will it be something that you will shed a tear? Because, this is a big deal. I mean, not many people can say they're going to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, there are athletes from all over that don't get inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, we've got Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens that aren't inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, Alex Rodriguez is not going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, I don't think John Sally's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't in the Hall of Fame, but you're going to be in the Hall of Fame coming up. You're officially on December the 2nd. So, I mean, Danny, are you going to shed a tear or, I mean, talk to me about that.
I can guarantee you that Eddie LaGuardia will be, he's an emotional guy. He may shed a tear. I don't know about myself. I'm not a crier at all, but I can tell you it's probably being around the team and the coaches, children and their children now. It could get emotional. What's kind of emotional right now is you keep calling me Danny, which is kind of funny because, Danny used to have hair on his head and freckles across his nose. That guy is long gone 4 decades later. I think it's kind of funny, but, that night I'll be called, although my corporate life, I come with the name Dan. Certainly hearing the name Danny certainly brings back some fond memories of the guys. But that night I'll be Danny Byrnes again, for everybody else. So it is.
That's gotta make you feel good, though, right? Because Dan's a great name. Don't get me wrong, but I heard the guys call you Danny. Rich would refer to you as Danny. Eddie would. So automatically, we're going back into time, right into 1982, and you were Danny Byrnes. You might be Dan and really, really way successful in the world, but in that team, in that moment, you were Danny Byrnes.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I'm only teasing. Yeah, you know what? It could be emotional there. We're going to try to see how we get there through this. I think the ceremony starts at 3 and goes to 5, and then we have a check-in. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of food and buffet and stuff like that. But you know what? It's going to be like just jumping from table to table to talk. I'm hoping they have, not that they're going to have a cocktail hour like a wedding, but it is going to. It's only going to be us this year. They're not going to induct anyone else, so they're just going to have the team embrace. But I'm looking forward to hearing everyone else's stories, reminiscing, and of course, little Earl, not doing a jab at me. But I'm sure there'll be great stories about my lack of athletic ability, because I can tell you right now, I lucked out on being on this team. I went to Brooklyn College for an education and ended up playing basketball. For me, for a guy who just loves basketball, every aspect of it, just practicing 2 to 3 hours a day with superior talent was a lot of fun for me. I got better every day, and it was a lot of fun. And for people that don't realize how much that is, it is. We gave up a lot. It's almost like a full-time job.
Oh, absolutely. No question. Being a D3 athlete, and again, I've covered a lot of D3 basketballers, I'm sure you're aware of. This is not like being at Duke. This is not like being at UCLA or even St. John's, where, okay, you're on a scholarship and you get kind of pampered and you've got all this. No, it's basically like, you've got to get up. Practice is probably at 7 o'clock in the morning. You got to then get ready, change, get back to class by 9 o'clock. You have lunch maybe with the team. You come back maybe for one more practice, or when you're not practicing, maybe you find a way to work on campus or work off campus. And then, oh, by the way, you have to come home, study, do your homework, and then start all over again, like you said. So being a D3 athlete, I think, is like no other athlete. It's actually like no other of anything else, because again, there's no scholarship here. There's no anything what you see on TV. And that's why I think in a lot of ways it's so special with what you guys had did, because again, the CUNY, it's very difficult. It's I know what I've covered this conference. I went to school in this conference. I know what it's like. I know these players. I've gotten to know them. And what you guys did is really, really special. That's why it's so rare and what it is. And I think that's why I almost have to ask you, what advice would you give to players or people that might want to go into this? I know you've had a lot of success since Brooklyn College in the personal world, but I always think, and I asked you this the last time, but we have obviously someone that's on with us each and every week, that is the brute force Brad Weiss, who's kind of in his way going into his footsteps of being a pretty big basketball coach. He does work with the Long Island Nets, and he does work with Level Up Basketball and Plainview JFK in Long Island. He's now coaching the JV boys basketball team. What advice would you give to a Brad Weiss or anybody else that's going to probably wind up wrapping up their D3 career and then go into something else, or maybe figure out, do they want to stick to the game of basketball? So what advice would you give to somebody, Danny?
It's a very competitive environment, the coaching, and you got to do a lot of networking. Someone from my neighborhood, from the St. Brendan's that I mentioned before, with the Flynns and the Shelley family and Frank Volpe and stuff like that, was John Armstrong. And his name's Jocko, and he's now the announcer for the Toronto Raptors. And but he was he started out as a high school coach. He went to Fordham, and he ended up working with Tom Penders at Fordham. And then,
Sure. I remember Tom Penders. I think he coached Texas Tech also, right? The Texas or Texas Tech at some point, one of those teams.
and then he and what ends up happening was that he was mature and everything, but he worked the camps, and he absolutely, all the summer camps, and he basically had an opportunity to be an assistant coach at Niagara. And then when the head coach resigned, he ended up being the youngest coach in America. So, but he was very passionate about it, and but he networked well. He was very smart, and he took advantage of his opportunity. And then he was there. I think he was there for like 10 years at Niagara, and then he ended up taking the Rapture job. And I guess the amazing thing about it, he's been the only voice since the team's in there. And
1995. Yeah, we're talking 20 going to 28 years. I mean, that's crazy, right? Think about that. It's a big deal.
But I did watch somebody like him, go through the ranks, and things fell in place for him. But he worked hard at it. So the only advice I could give to somebody about have a plan. Use your education. If you're going to go to school, just take advantage of that. And if you enjoy playing basketball and you enjoy coaching, because playing is slightly different than coaching, and although you love it, there are some players that can't really coach, and there are guys that weren't the best players that are actually excellent coaches. So I would just say go with your passion. If they're passionate about something, I'm sure they're gonna be successful at it. But I knew that I coached after, but coached in the younger leagues, with my sons and stuff like that. And although I was a good X and O coach, and thought I motivated people and stuff like that, it was still passion for me because I loved it, but it wasn't the same thing as being a college coach and recruiting players and making sure they stayed.
It's a difficult life. I mean, getting to know and covering and these coaches, Danny, it's really a very, very difficult life, and the time you put in, the time you're away from family, and just everything else, the sacrifices that you put into it. I mean, it's really, really not an easy world to go into. The pay is not great, and there's just different things, a lot of politics that are with these different schools. So I mean, if you're gonna go into coaching, you got to really, really have the patience, and you got to really be prepared that your life may be different than somebody else that might have a family and get to go enjoy those things. And I could certainly appreciate that from my own backgrounds and kind of making those own same sacrifices. So obviously, certainly the likes of the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, they'll figure it out. Danny Byrnes is giving them great advice here. And before we get to some closing thoughts here, I wanted to ask you a couple of quick questions here, obviously, in terms of anything else related to the Magical team. I mean, the Final Four itself, playing in the Final Four, I mean, what was that memory like? I mean, again, how many people can say they've played in the Final Four? So what was that like, that experience?
One of the things about it is looking back at it, like almost every Sunday in the NFL for 12 years after, or 14 years after, one of the guys that was on the winning team on Wabash from Indiana was that guy, Pete Mezzalaws.
Oh, yeah, Buffalo Bills, right? Played those Bills team. I think he was on the Panthers, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he was with the Seahawks and the Bills,
Yep.
And, so I got this, so that was a reminder every Sunday that he'd be on the team. And like, Pete Mezzalaws was out there again. I think the guy scored like 44 points. We always thought if we got matched up against us that Rick Davis would have been blocking all of those shots instead of his easy turnaround 8 to 10 foot shot that Rick would be sending at, and we'd have our fast break. But that never actually happened. So but it was it's fun thinking about it every once in a while. But you know what? This is going to be a good event. This Hall of Fame thing. It's going to be. I'm going to embrace everyone out there. I was lucky enough to to get to talk to so many of them and text back and forth about how they're doing during this this 2.5 year period that we've been since we've been elected to it. It's just now let's get the ceremony over. And,
I know, because I feel like we've been talking about this.
There could be a few too. I'm hoping you come too. That'll be
We're
good.
gonna try. We're gonna definitely try for sure. I mean, certainly, I know that we'll definitely make an effort. I also want to let people know that I've shared our interview in a couple of different places. I want to give a shout out to my friends over at the Sports Authorities group from John Gonzalez on Facebook. John has been a big supporter of mine over the past several months, and I really want to thank John for his friendship. I also want to thank Daniel Weiss, a Brooklyn College alum. Also, he has a group on Facebook called New York City College Sports Fans, and we shared the group interview here with them so his members can hear, because obviously Danny went to Brooklyn College also. He's a big Bulldogs guy, and he covers a lot of different things. We've had him on the show a couple of times, so I wanted to recognize some different people that we got to share the interview with. And obviously, never say never. And December 2nd is not that far away. It's October 15th. That's what's crazy. So if I do my math, and I'm not very good at math, I know, but we're less than 7 weeks away. That's a pretty cool feat. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're not that far away. So, I mean, listen, we're going to finally get that. And I got to ask you, I mean, do you guys get like a ring? Do you get something for this? I'm just kind of curious. Like, do you guys get anything
Actually,
for it?
we're curious about that too. I think
Oh, okay. I'm not the only one
I
then.
think the school's probably going to give us a plaque, a piece, or something like that. But that'll be the a memorable item.
Would you want a ring instead of a plaque? I mean, some people they want medals or belts, and
You
in
know,
wrestling, everybody gets belts. I mean, so
well,
I just.
maybe one of those WWE belts would be nice to walk around
Oh,
the
we
name.
have connections to a lot of wrestlers on Sportswire Radio. I can promise you that we have a massive following around the world with wrestling. If I can pull a string or two and see if we can get something for the Kings men to be honored and thanked for something like that, I'll try my best. I can't guarantee, but I'll certainly see if I can pull a favor or two. But I would think that a ring would be cool, but a plaque would work. But you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because
It
we've been
does.
waiting for this for a long time, and it's kind of long overdue. I mean, listen, should it have happened before? I don't know, but obviously COVID did play a part in that, and obviously there's no question that this is definitely something that I know a lot of guys are going to be looking forward to. Whether it's anybody, Glenn McMillan, Kenny Vickers, and certainly Rick the Rejecter Davis, Ed De La Guardia, Rich McAuliffe, and a couple of people have also commented. I want to get them in. Lucille, pronounce your name for me. Golombeski, I think it is. He says, awesome interview. Congrats, Kingsman. I could not agree more. Kitty Kelly says here, great interview. Yeah, Danny did great. Well, Danny, I'm going to promise you this. After December 2nd, regardless of what happens, we're going to bring you back to talk about the ceremony because I actually want to get your thoughts from get the inside scoop. So we're definitely going to bring you back on after the 2nd of December because we can kind of recap and talk about that here also. So Kitty Kelly says, great interview, Danny. This is great here from Teresa Byrnes. So you've definitely got fans out there from
Yeah.
all over the place. So that's always nice, right? There's people that want to hear what you had to say, and that is always cool. So before I get to closing thoughts here, I wanted to ask you then, is there a moment or two that stands out most from that 1982 season?
I think we talked about this in the first interview. Was that we talked about that city game against City College.
Yes.
There was an ice storm that cut.
Yes, I remember you talking about that. Yep.
And Ted Gustis, led us that way because Coach Reiner was stuck out in Long Island, unable to get to the game, which I'm sure frustrated him to no ends. But
sure.
But Ted ended up taking a team that was, and mixed the lineup up, and he got to see a lot of players that didn't see regular playing time. And from that point on, after Ted took us through that, we ended up going 10-2, and we had a nice run at the end. I certainly know that was a memory for me because I actually got slid into the starting lineup from there. But there were so many moments that was small that got captured, and I think at this ceremony that many of them will come up, and when somebody else brings sparks of memory and they reminisce about a story, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. And it's a good feeling. So,
well, I hope that you guys all get to speak. I hope that there'll be certainly the opportunity for different guys to be able to speak about that moment and what it means. And I know that there'll obviously be a lot of people from you guys that were still from the team and such, and family and friends. But I think it would be important that, and again, I don't want to give advice to Alex Slang or anybody else, but I would think that there should at least be some type of speeches from different guys, whether it's
Well,
Dave
I'm
Brown.
sure they're gonna. I'm sure somewhere that we're gonna have a thing on. And I know Alex, when he was talking about an agenda, was trying to get the names of people that wanted to speak.
There you go.
So there are going to be some of the players talking. I'm hoping that everybody is going to want to say something. But you know how it is. Not everybody wants to get up and publicly say things.
It's tough. It's tough. There's no question that there are some people that are a little bit more shy about it and more just different personalities, more reserved, and there are others that will want to speak. But I think at the end of the day, I think it'd be important for the program and even for the players. I think for the current players on the men's and women's team that maybe can use this as motivation. Obviously, the women's team is certainly always primed and poised to do big things in the CUNY, and certainly I know with Coach Baptiste and the men's team, certainly they're more on the rebuilding right now in terms of where they are. But obviously, again, I think it's a big monumental deal, and certainly, again, congratulations to not just you, but the entire staff, the entire team, everybody else that's still alive, and obviously Coach Reiner, I know, is looking down on everybody, and Coach Gustis, shout out to Coach Gustis. Coach Gustis is just like he's a superstar. He's a really really big deal. So we spoke about that in the first interview for sure. But before I get to closing thoughts. Is there anything you'd like to say to friends or family that are here with us before we give you your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I got to apologize to my friends and family for listening to these stories for 4 decades, and now that we're finally, maybe they'll put them around, behind them. But, my sisters have always been very supportive of me. My friends, because, my friends are basketball junkies just like me. So the players would not mind Danny being a spokesman. Oh, all right, thanks, Earl.
I think Richie McAuliffe told me that.
Guys like Earl and Ronnie and a few others, they really do, speak eloquently. So, putting them in front of a microphone might be really good too. Their take on things is slightly different than mine, and like everybody else's individual views on things, but they're tremendous at the way they handle themselves, on and off the court, so it was always great being with them. So
well, obviously, again, congratulations. I know it's really, really still a monumental moment, and it's a big deal. And obviously, shout out to Earl, obviously, and some of the family and friends of yours that, again, have had the opportunity to hear this. I know that when we spoke the first time, it was like kind of a big deal, but I think with video, it's a big deal. So obviously, we're going to get to closing thoughts here. So obviously, it's been a tremendous honor, and obviously, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you and kicking off the season with us here on Sportswire Radio. So I turn it over to you, my friend, and anything else you want to plug, share, say, and the floor is certainly yours. And fire away, my friend.
No, you listen, Tom, thank you for your time on this. We appreciate it. And, from the players' point of view, it's not that we felt like we were forgotten. We weren't. But, when, Mr.
But there was a period where the program, listen, basketball wasn't played for a while. The program had to restart. This was a program that had its peaks and valleys. Let's be honest. It's great now, but it wasn't for a while. So I think this is still a big deal.
Yeah. So, just being able to be remembered, knowing, what we did, so long ago, and then embracing, Coach Reiner, Ted Gustis, and the rest of the players, how well and hard work does pay off. And I think that's one of the things that we clearly know. And I think that a lot of the success that we had at that time trickled down to the rest of our lives. And I think that's why that, so many of the players, have been successful off the court too. And
absolutely.
Success breeds confidence. And I think that's a lot of people, gain some confidence, after working under Mr. Reiner. So, Tom, I'll end it on this. What do we have? We're here an hour and 20 minutes now. It's I enjoy talking with you. I know if you come, I know the other players will enjoy talking with you too. So
okay.
Hoping that
we're going to work on it. We're going to, if Alex Lang says It's a good idea. Obviously, that it's something that we'll definitely keep the calendar open. Let me just put it that way. We'll keep the calendar open for December 2nd. I can
Then,
promise you.
then I'll have to talk to Alex to keep that on the calendar then.
And knowing Alex like I do, Mr. Lang, I'm sure he'll have an interesting perspective on that because we have had some conversations in the past. Let me just put it that way. Obviously, nothing negative, but obviously, all my love to the Brooklyn College Athletics
Okay.
program, and I actually do want to give a shout out before we go here to the Brooklyn College Athletics program because the Brooklyn College Athletics program always grants us many opportunities to speak about their program, whether it's basketball, whether it's the CUNYAC, other schools that we do work with. Obviously, when it comes to John Jay College, we've done some stuff with obviously City College in the past. So I always want to make sure that we are very, very gracious for any time that Brooklyn College gives us when it comes to their programs. And of course, the men's basketball team as well. That's BCMBB on Twitter, also on Instagram. Brooklyn_Bulldogs is for the entire athletics program. Also, BK College alumni for Danny himself, obviously on Instagram and Twitter, where you can find out more information about the program itself and all the great things that everybody does at Brooklyn College. Because Brooklyn College is always just one of the premier colleges. Beautiful campus out there in Flatbush, right by the Flatbush Junction over there. Certainly a beautiful community, certainly a community that has been well ingrained and done a lot of great things, I think, at the end of the day for the community as a whole. So certainly want to make sure that we recognize Brooklyn College and all the things that it does here. So certainly I could not think of a better way than to kick off the college basketball season tonight on Sportswire Radio with the Hall of Famer himself. That's right, Hall of Famer Danny Byrnes from the 1982 Brooklyn College men's basketball team. Of course, the only team in the entire history of the CUNY to have entered the Final Four, won a regional tournament. They finished third that year in the tournament, only lost by 1 point to national champion Potsdam State, which of course had a guy, Pete Metzelaar, by the way, who at the time he retired had the most games ever played by a tight end. So not too bad, Danny. Not too bad of a team and player you lost to, but certainly you guys are winners. You guys are one of the greatest teams we've ever had in Sportswire Radio. I can't wait to have you back on after the second. I can't wait to maybe speak with you there. And certainly we'll see if some of the guys want to come on also here on video before then. And congratulations, my friend. I look forward to speaking with you soon and looking forward to this and long overdue, my friend.
All right. Thanks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we were here on Sportswire Radio and kicking off our college basketball season again, talking the 1982 Brooklyn College, then Knightsmen basketball team that was inducted into the Final Four. Obviously, the Kingsmen, the only team to have won a regional tournament in the entire history of all the CUNY athletics. We did that here with Mr. Danny Byrnes, and of course, Danny, a huge cog to that team, of course, with the likes of Rick the Rejected Davis, Danny Brown, Kenny Vickers, Glenn McMillan, Rich McAuliffe, Ed De La Guardia. Can go on and on and on and on. And congratulations to all the guys. We'll be back here with more coverage later this week on the #1 global radio station. I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight.